Let me know when you got me muted.
All right. Well, hello everybody, and thank you for joining us for PlantRight's 2013 Invasive Plants Webinar. My name is Greg Richardson, and I appreciate your coming out here and joining us tonight. We have a couple of exciting presentations lined up for you here, but before we get started, I'd like to go through a couple of housekeeping items with you, including introducing you to the webinar tool that we're using tonight. So this is a picture-in-a-picture, and what you are seeing are a couple of the features that I wanted to point out. The first of which is that we are presenting, and you can hear us through your speakers. But we've actually muted all of the participants in this webinar in order to minimize background noise. And so if you'd like to communicate with us, please do so using the chat box on the bottom left-hand side of the screen. If you're having any technical issues, please use the technical support button, the green question mark on the top right-hand side of the screen. And then there's some documents that we're going to load up later in the presentation, and you can find those on the bottom right-hand side. A couple of other things to note is that this webinar is being recorded, so if you'd like to go back and view it at any time in the future, you will be able to do so. If you are a Master Gardener, this webinar is eligible for continued education credit, so feel free to take advantage of that. And then if you'd like to join us for our Spring Nursery Survey later this year, there's a 5-question quiz that we're going to ask you to take on our website, and I'll talk about this later on. It's not intended to be difficult, but just to make sure that you watch this webinar and you're familiar with the process behind the survey. So no need to take notes, but I definitely do encourage you to pay attention. So the way that we've broken up the event tonight is into 4 sections. There's going to be some background on invasive plants, why we consider this to be an important issue and how PlantRight is approaching it. And then we're lucky to have Joe DiTomaso joining us tonight. He's a UC Davis researcher and professor, and he has a wealth of knowledge on the topic of invasive plants. And I'll provide you with a proper bio for him later on. We have a 3rd section, which will be sort of an overview of the nursery survey and instructions for how to complete it. And then we will finish with a question and answer period at the end. So please feel free to type in any questions you have during the course of the webinar in that chat box. And what we will do is we will collect them and go through them at the very end of the webinar tonight. So a good place to begin is by asking, what are invasive plants, and making sure that we all are kind of on the same page about what they mean. And so an invasive plant is one that is foreign, so it's not native to an area. It spreads on its own, so it doesn't need any tillage, irrigation, or soil amendments. And as a result of it spreading on its own, it causes some kind of harm, whether it be financial, environmental, or harm to human health. And the majority of plants that we have as ornamental plants are not problematic. Even if they are foreign, they don't spread on their own. But there are some that do, and so those exceptions are the ones that really do cause significant impacts, and what I'd like to do is talk about some of those with you now. And the impacts are both ecological and economic, and so from an ecological standpoint, one of the things that invasive plants have a tendency to do is impact biodiversity. And so what we're seeing here is a coastal dune where ice plant has moved in, and you can see it crowding out the plants that were there before. But in addition, it actually impacts animals as well, like the western snowy plover that's now endangered and would otherwise be able to use these dunes as nesting habitat. In addition, invasive plants can affect the water cycle or hydrology of an area. And so what we're seeing here, it looks like a meadow, but it's not actually a meadow. It is a waterway. And what we're seeing is water hyacinth that has completely covered this river. It's in the Sacramento Delta. And you can imagine that because of this plant, it now challenges terrestrial wildlife and birds from being able to access this water. It also really impacts the aquatic wildlife that would be present in this area, as there's really no more sunlight or oxygen levels in this water. So now from an economic standpoint, invasive plants, many of the ones that we have in our state are highly flammable, and they increase the intensity of wildfires. And so you are all probably well aware that it's costly to manage these wildfires. They also have the potential to really directly impact and damage private property and infrastructure. And then lastly, for our, the examples I'm going to give, when invasive plants move into cropland, they're considered weeds. And a lot of money is spent just trying to suppress weeds in agriculture. And when these weeds take over, like pictured here, it reduces agricultural yields. This is a farmer in San Mateo County that had pampas grass move into his land, and he just can't use the land to grow anything in those spots anymore. And so here's a list of some of these impacts, and these are some of the more or significant ones, but they're not all of them. There are a lot of impacts that come with invasive plants. And so this kind of begs the question of, well, how did these plants get here? And in 2003, a team of researchers looked at this very question, and what they found was that about half of the plants, or 48%, were introduced through horticulture as ornamentals. And so what this means is that if we're going to address this issue going forward, we really need the nursery industry's participation to address this in a way that's really meaningful. And what's sometimes disheartening is that some of these plants, again, not many of them, but some of them, or at least not a high percentage of them, are still sold today, but some of them are. And so what I'd like to do is go through an example of this with you. This is green fountain grass, Pennisetum cetaceum. And you can see it here for sale in a nursery. And this is actually a picture that was taken by a volunteer of our survey in 2012. And when it is planted in a landscape, as shown here, the issue is that these seeds are actually wind dispersed. And when you put this plant outside and it's invasive in that area, it has the tendency to spread on its own. And so you'll start to see it in places where it is invasive, coming up and growing where it clearly was not planted. And if this plant is not removed and this situation is not controlled, then what can happen is when this plant is more aggressive than those around it, it'll start to just really take over an area. And so this is really like a worst case example of that, and it is very pretty, but there are a lot of adverse consequences that come with this plant. For one, it is highly flammable. Also, it doesn't really do a whole lot to give back to the wildlife in that area. It doesn't provide very good forage, it's not good habitat for insects, and so what you'll see is the biodiversity of this area, not just of plants, but also of wildlife, decrease in that immediate zone. And so this is where green fountain grass is currently found in the state, shown in orange, and where its expected suitable range is shown in green. And the reason why I bring this up is that there is the potential for this plant to really spread a lot more beyond where it currently exists. And so this is an issue that it's there, but also an opportunity to keep it from advancing. And this is really the reason why the PlantRight project was started, was to address the introduction of invasive plants through gardening and landscaping. And so our mission is to phase out horticultural invasive plants in a fashion that is voluntary, collaborative, and science-based. And so from 2005 till today, there are a handful of things that we've done. These include convening a steering committee. This kind of touches on the collaborative aspect. We brought together leaders from the nursery industry, from environmental groups, government agencies, and even the scientific and academic communities to really get together and think about how we can address this issue in a meaningful and practical way. We've also developed a regional plant list, so we've looked at what invasive plants are still out there that are being used in the nursery industry, and where are those plants in issue. And then we've identified alternative plants that can be used to serve the same role in a garden or landscape. And then lastly, we've conducted outreach and education to garden groups, landscaping groups, and homeowners. Now, some of the things that we're doing right now are this retail survey, which I'll touch on later. We are updating our plant list, and I think Joe is actually going to talk about that a little bit. We're engaging in partnerships with the nursery industry, gardening groups, landscaping groups, to get information about this out there, and then also to bring them on board with our program. And then the last thing is we are working on a plant risk evaluation tool through which we can predict the invasiveness of a plant before it becomes a problem in the wild. And so because that's something that Joe has been working on, I'm going to actually hand it over to Joe. And I should I'd like to let you know a little bit about his background because he does really bring a wealth of knowledge. Joe received his PhD at UC Davis in 1986 and spent nearly 8 years on the faculty at Cornell University. Since 1995, he has been on the faculty in the Plant Sciences Department at UC Davis and has published over 140 manuscripts or book chapters, 250 total papers, and has co-authored 4 books on his research on weed science-related topics. Joe also serves on the National and California Invasive Species Advisory Committee, was recently elected to serve as the president of the Weed Science Society of America, and is a member of the steering committee for PlantRight, and we're really lucky to have him. So, Joe, I'm going to load up your slides here, and I think you are ready to go. Joe? Joe, are you there? I may have muted you, and I'm trying to unmute you. Joe, can you type into the text box? There we go, you are muted. Let's see here. Well, it doesn't seem to be unmuting you. Why don't I call you right back and bring you into the webinar that way? I'm going to end this. Sorry, everybody. Hold on just a second, and I will bring Joe back onto the call, or into the meeting. Yep, there we go. Sorry about that. Take it away when you're ready. Okay, well, thank you, Joe. That was really great. I really love hearing about sort of the bigger picture work that you guys are doing to keep invasive plants out of the trade. I think that that's a really important component of this whole effort to really combat the spread of invasive plants in California and preserve our unique biodiversity. I am introducing this slide here to kind of point out that the plant risk evaluation tool is really about preventing those new introductions of new invasive plants that haven't arrived yet in the state. And what we're doing with our spring nursery survey is really looking at the existing invasive plants that we have and trying to get those off of store shelves as well for the same purposes. And so it's a really nice complementary effort. And I want to touch on a couple of things that you said that I thought was worth repeating, which is that the nursery survey we've conducted in past years has really helped to influence a lot of the ways that we have now shaped our program. For one, it's helped us to highlight that it's probably time for us to update our list. There are certain plants that we're not seeing out in the trade anymore. It also has helped us to understand, well, what plants should we remove? We know which ones really are the best to take off and which ones are the best to leave. And now we can actually use the nursery survey to research what plants to add. And that's something that we're going to be doing this year with those plants that you mentioned are going to be new to the list, is we're not actually adding them to our official list yet. What we're doing is we're adding them to the survey, and we're going to see to what degree they're actually out in the trade and then make a determination this summer, updating our list as a whole in a more official way. So now what I'd like to do is actually talk about our spring nursery survey more specifically and provide some instructions for participation to help orient those who maybe have never done this before, and then also to sort of refresh the memories of those who have participated in the past and are interested in sort of doing this again. So the purpose of the survey is really data collection. And the reason why we gather this information is to track the retail market for invasive plants and get a gauge as to what plants are still out there. And that helps us to understand what plants are being sold, where they're being sold, and by whom. And what this really ultimately does is allows PlantRight to engage the industry in a strategic way to get these plants off of store shelves. And so the way that we've set up this survey is such that in Southern California, it's going to begin a little bit earlier than in Northern California, in March to May. And what we ask that you do is if you sign up for a store to participate in the survey, that you visit it when you feel like really the spring gardening season is in full bloom, when that store is really going to have the most plants for you to go and collect information on. And so that's really going to depend on where you live in the state. And one of the things that you could do is even call that store in advance and just ask them when they expect to have the most plants available. And usually you can get a determination that way and put it down on your calendar. The other thing is we've randomly selected 282 retail stores this year for statistical purposes. That's why we randomly selected them, and we've done so in a way that's proportionate to the number of nurseries in each county. So you're going to see that we're looking to collect data from more stores in LA County, as an example, than we are in San Luis Obispo or Kern County or Shasta County, right? And so the steps for completing the survey are as follows. There are 7 of them. They are to create an account on our website, then to go to our website and complete the online quiz, as I mentioned before. The third step is to select a store to survey, and then the fourth is to gather the survey materials that we've created. The next one, the fifth, is to visit the store and collect data. And then once you have that data, to go back onto our website and submit it online. And then the last optional step is to provide us with feedback on your experience. It's really great to get that feedback so that we can keep making the survey better every year. So I'm going to go through these with you in a little bit more detail. This is a snapshot of our website, www.plantright.org, and the first thing that we'll ask you to do is to log on or to create a new account. If you had an account last year, it will work again this year. And I should note that this process is actually still to be set up. It'll be ready later in this week, and we'll email you when we're ready for you to create a new account. But this will at least be a primer for you for when that's ready. Once you've created an account, you'll see that the Spring Survey tab has become available on the left-hand side of the page. And you can see that there is a link now to the webinar quiz. And so the next thing that you'll want to do is to take that quiz. 4 questions out of 5 is considered passing, And if you don't pass the first time, you can continue to take the quiz and even revisit this webinar if you need to until you do pass. And it's not intended to be difficult. It's just to make sure that you are familiar with the process for completing the survey. So the next step is to select the store to survey. And what you're seeing here is our instructions page. And there is, it's basically set up like a checklist from top to bottom so that when you get to the bottom of the page, you're pretty much done with the survey process. And so as you can see, number one of step one is to review the list of nurseries to survey online. If you want to revisit this page, you can see the instructions link on the left-hand side. You can also now see that there's a link for the nursery list. And so if you click on that, you'll see the list of nurseries to survey. I should note that for those that can't join us tonight, we're actually recording the webinar and we're going to allow them some time to view it before we make the nursery list go live. So the nurseries will become available at noon on March 1st. So make a note if you would like to sign up. It is first come, first serve, except for in certain counties like Orange County, San Diego. There, the volunteers will be matched to the stores ahead of time, and you should receive a message about this from your county coordinator. And so when you click on that link to look at the nursery list, this is what you'll see. And you can find the stores in your region by clicking on the county toggle at the top of the screen. And when you find a store that you'd like to sign up for, you click on the Survey This Nursery link on the right-hand side of the page. Once you click on that, it will ask you to confirm. You say yes, and what will happen is that store will actually drop off of the list so that it won't be visible anymore, and that way nobody else is going to sign up for it as well. And if you'd like to find out information about that store going forward, you can do so by clicking on the My Nurseries link on the left-hand side. If there are no stores left in your county, just get in touch with me or someone else at PlantRight and we'll help you either find a partner to complete the survey with, or we'll help you to find another store in your region that we can collect information on. So this is a map of the Southern California counties that are highlighted. And I've highlighted them in different colors to reflect sort of the ratio of the number of stores that we're looking to collect data from versus the number of people who have RSVP'd so far from those counties. And so those, the pink counties are the ones where there are actually a good number more stores than there are volunteers. If you live in one of those counties, feel free to engage other people in the group that you found out about the survey through about this process and see if they might want to help. You can also sign up for multiple stores if you are interested. There's really no major limit to how many you can sign up for. The blue counties are the ones where there are more stores and volunteers, but it's pretty close. It's not quite as dramatic of a difference. The yellow shaded counties are the ones where really there are about the same number of volunteers to stores, and it seems like the proportion is going to be pretty good. And then San Luis Obispo in green, there were more volunteers than there were stores, almost double. And so I've actually worked with Fiona Brennan, the Master Gardener Coordinator there, and we've actually added some stores to account for that. So you've signed up for a store. The next step is to gather survey materials, and there are 4 of them that we've put together, and a colleague of mine, Chris Crawford, is actually going to add these to the document section on the bottom right-hand side of the screen so you can look at them, but I ask that you maybe do that in your own time to the extent that it doesn't distract you too much from the webinar. This is the first one. It's a set of instructions, and it's like the instructions page on our website where you can really go top to bottom and complete the survey using this sheet. By the time you get to the bottom, you're pretty much done. So we recommend that you print this out and bring it with you to the store so you have it as a resource for when you are out at the nursery, and if you have any questions, this can kind of help to be as a guide. This is our survey form for writing down information. I've highlighted in this orange box that we categorize the plants based on their growth form. So you see all the grasses there, the ground covers and vines below that. Also, I want to call out this store code section on the top left. We actually ask that you input a store code as opposed to writing down the store name, and that's really just to protect the privacy of the store. And so that will be included when you sign up for the store. You will receive a confirmation email, and the store code will be in that email, and then also in the My Nurseries link on our webpage. And one thing to note is that there are really a lot of varieties of plant labels and varying degrees of information available. And so we ask that you write down really as much as you have available to you, and then that's all that we can ask. Here's an explanation sheet, and it's a good set of talking points in case you engage the store staff about this survey. And with regard to interaction with store staff, I want to point out that we really do our best to conduct this survey in good faith with the nursery industry. It's not tied to regulatory efforts, and all of the information from stores remains anonymous. So there's really no risk to the store itself. We do welcome you to inform the stores that you were there to conduct the survey. No disguises are necessary. If you are talking to the store employee about the survey, though, this is really a good opportunity to use that explanation sheet. It has a lot of good talking points on it, and you can leave it with the store staff if you'd like. Our information is on there. It has PlantRight's website listed, so you can refer the staff to it if they'd like to learn more about our program. If you'd prefer not to engage the store staff, but would rather just collect the data and then go on your way, that's okay too. Information gathering like this happens in the nursery industry all the time, and our survey isn't unique in that sense. But in the event that you're asked not to complete the survey, we ask that you please just respect the store's request and leave courteously. If this happens, just let us know and we can address this on a case-by-case basis. But I should note that we surveyed 238 stores last year, and in only one instance was a survey volunteer asked not to collect data. So it's less than 1% of the time, but it does happen. So I just want to let you know. And then lastly, the purpose of the survey, I just want to remind you, is data collection. It is not outreach, so we ask that you kindly refrain from doing any advocacy during your nursery visit. This is our last material, the Plant ID Guide, and it's just pictures of the plant to help you identify them if the plant labels aren't particularly useful. There are insets of the pictures of the plants on there, so that we just want to call out that they don't always look like they do in the wild. Some of their most descriptive features, like the flowers or the plumes, may not be present at that time. So once you have all the materials, we recommend that you visit the store and collect data. We recommend that you give yourself about 45 to 90 minutes. It depends on the size of the store, how it's organized, how good the labeling is of the plants. And when you get there, try to get a lay of the land. One of the things that may save you time is to note that there are no edibles, annual plants, or indoor plants on our list. And so if there are sections dedicated to those plants, you can just skip them entirely. The next thing to do, if you find an invasive plant, is record information about it. Take out your survey form, write down the information you can find. And then also we ask that you take a picture of the plant. There are two pictures we'd like you to get, one of the label and then one of the plant itself. If you'd like to take additional photos for the sake of helping us to better sort of verify that that is the species we're concerned with, you could take a close-up of the green fountain grass plume, for example. That would be helpful. But I really want to stress that this is important, because if we do not get pictures of these plants and can't verify that they are indeed the ones that we're concerned with, the invasives on our list, then we can't use that survey data. So it is a really crucial part of the survey process. A couple of things to note, we've had some pictures in the past that haven't been as instructive, and so to the degree that you can take pictures that are clear and unobstructed, that really helps us a lot. You can see, some pictures here are blurry or distant, lack reference. It's hard to tell what plant is of interest. And so in this vein, if you have a digital camera and can just flip through the pictures before you leave the survey itself and just you leave the nursery itself, and just make sure that they will do the job, that would be great. Some other things that we really do like is, take some pictures of things that maybe were like a quirky part of the nursery, or if you thought there was a section that was really beautiful. It just adds a personal touch, and it's nice to have that. So once you have all the data and the photos collected, the next thing to do will be to go back to our website. You can see in the circled section there's an area to submit your survey and to upload photos. If this is going to be an issue in any way, you can mail these to us, your forms and your photos, fax them, etc. And then the last thing is to provide us with feedback. We'll give you a link, and we're going to update this questionnaire, and any input that you have in terms of how to make this better, including the webinar, is really appreciated. If you're a master gardener, you can then add the hours that you commit to the survey to the Master Gardener Volunteer Management System, and get some credit for your participation. And that is it. So thank you all very much for joining us tonight. This has been a really great experience. It's about 8:23 according to my watch here. So that means that we have about 7 minutes for questions. And what I'm going to do is leave the screen with my and Joe's contact information in case you would like to get a hold of us at any point in the future. But we'll go ahead and go through the questions now. And Chris Crawford, who's here with me, is actually going to walk us through some of those questions, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris. I'm going to be working with the PlantRight project this year with Greg. First off, I want to thank Greg and Joe both for being here and having this webinar. It's been great for me. And thank you to all the participants, especially for all your questions. I appreciate it. I got 2 questions from Jan B, actually. At the very beginning, she had a question about a graphic that Joe showed during the beginning of his talk about the color of the bars in his graph. If you look in the documents section on the lower bottom hand corner of the survey, or of the webinar, excuse me, you'll be able to find the 2012 fact sheet from our survey last year. And on the second page, there's actually a similar graphic. It's vertical instead of horizontal, but it gets the job done, and it'll give you the same information. She also asked another question, which I'll address to Joe, with regards to the screening process used to determine the potential for a plant to become invasive. She asked, why not screen the plant earlier, considering what a waste of investment it represents for the growers? So, Joe, do you have any response for that? Yep, we can hear you. Mm-hmm. All right, thanks, Joe. And Jan has another question. What will it take for the industry to adopt the kinds of screening tools that you describe here in the webinar? Great, thanks, Joe. The next couple questions I have I'm gonna direct towards Greg here. The first is coming from Marco, and also Joe, you might be able to answer this as well. He asks, is the estimation of the irrigation or water needs guide available to the public or to master gardeners?
Joe, I believe he's talking about the Wuckles list. Great, thanks, Joe.
All right, and we've got 2 questions that Greg will be able to answer here. Christy T asks, can two people sign up for a store together?
Yeah, great question. So the way that that will work is on our website, only one person will sign up, but to make sure that the other person is included in all of the communications that we conduct through the course of the spring survey, what I would suggest that you do is when you're submitting data for that store, put both your name and the other person's name in the field for the surveyor name category, and we'll make sure to send the information out about the survey results and any other communications to them. But in terms of signing up on our website, it'll really just be one person, and so if you, let's say, receive a confirmation email with the information about that store to your email address, then what I would advise is that you just forward it along to your partner, and that way they'll have that information as well.
Great, thanks, Greg. It looks like we're running out of time, but I'll leave you guys with one last question from Lori W. When do the results of the data collection get published?
Great. Yeah, so we will be finishing our data collection process in mid to late June with the Northern California counties, and we'll go through a series of analyses on the data that we collect through the course of the summer. And typically by the first week of September, the information will be synthesized and packaged into that fact sheet that Chris has now added to the document section on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. So by September, you should have the information about the results of the survey on a statewide basis. I should note that last year we had 38 counties represented, 142 volunteers, so it was a really big effort, and the statistics that we got as a result of it were very meaningful, and so that was really a great thing for us. And I want to note that there was a comment that was made that I want to repeat. Billy Ricks out in Orange County, hey Billy, said that something she appreciates is that when you're collecting data about plants, if there's any doubt as to whether or not the plant that you're looking at is one of the ones that we're concerned with, the way to approach it is really just to collect that information anyway and send it in, and then that way, you know, as we're going through our verification process, we can double check and make sure that it is one of the invasives on our list, and we want to include it in our results. So if in doubt, include the information, and that would be great.
Looks like we have another question from Marco B. Greg, will you mail all the participants the list of stores, or will you provide that information only to the county coordinator?
So at this time, we've emailed the list of stores that we're looking to survey to the county coordinators. What we can do actually is put on our website a list of the stores and their locations on sort of the spring survey webpage, and you'll actually be taken to that page when you exit the webinar room. If you click the blue X at the top right-hand side of your screen. We typically do not in advance post the names of the nurseries, just again to protect their privacy, and we're trying to do this in as best faith as we can with the nursery trade, so we're not trying to target anyone. But I can provide the locations of the stores, and that way if someone is wondering if there's a store in their region, they can do so through that. So when I email everybody to let you know that the sign-up the process for creating an account has gone live, and that'll probably be in the next couple of days, I'll also let you know what the locations of the stores are so that you can flip through that.
All right. Well, great. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. And thanks again to Joe and to Greg for hosting the webinar. And, yeah, thank you guys so much for participating.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I look forward to working with you this spring.